Hello everyone, and welcome to an unconventional Fallout 4 character build. If you're someone like me who's played through this game dozens if not hundreds of times, and want to try something a little different on your next playthrough, then this is the build for you. I do want to quickly address the fact that I've been ill for quite a while, and therefore there's not been much content coming out. I am currently waiting for my wisdom teeth to be removed, which hopefully is the last thing in this long line of health issues, and fingers crossed I'll be back to making content regularly at some point next month. Anyway, enough of that, let's get back to the build. The special stats for this build are 3 strength, 1 perception, 9 endurance, 3 charisma, 3 intelligence, 7 agility, and 5 luck. You may notice this is actually a few points higher than what you start the game with, as for this build I not only picked up the special book in Sanctuary, but also a pair of bobbleheads in order to reach the minimum recommended special stats. I'd personally recommend the intelligence and strength bobbleheads as they're the 2 easiest to pick up, besides the perception bobblehead, which is still worth picking up, but not factored in here. With this special layout, you have very high endurance and agility, meaning you get lots of hit points, are good at stealth, and a great sprinter, making travelling across the Wasteland much quicker than normal. The major downside here is low perception, meaning that accuracy typically won't be great. You can still use the VAT system, especially at close range, but for long range shots, you're better off aiming manually. Like all my Fallout 4 builds, I will be splitting up my chosen perks into the categories of major, minor, and roleplaying, to help indicate just how important each of the perks is to the build. First up are the most important perks, those in the major category. These are Idiot Savant, Gunslinger, Gun Nut, and Lone Wanderer. Idiot Savant is the very first perk you should grab, as soon as you hit level 2. The reason for this is that this perk will make you level up faster, giving a chance for extra experience earned at every opportunity. By taking this perk early on, you will level up much faster and be able to get all the other perks quicker. Second of the major perks is Gunslinger. This is the damage perk for the build, though for the weapon this character uses I could have gone with either Rifleman or Commando instead. I'll make sure to let you know how to mod the weapon in the equipment section, but the reason I chose Gunslinger over Commando or Rifleman is mostly due to the secondary benefits of the perk. All of these double damage with certain weapon types, but with Gunslinger it makes it so your pistols gain 50% bonus range and have a small chance to disarm. This is going to make your weapon great over pretty much any distance, and sometimes allow you to watch your target drop their gun, which I always find funny. Third major perk is Gun Nut. This is used for weapon modding, and with it we can ensure our weapons are the best they can possibly be. Arguably just as important as the Gunslinger perk, this not only helps with improving damage, but ensures we can have all manner of stat boosts and fancy extras to our gear. Final of the major perks is Lone Wanderer. This is the strongest perk in the game, making you deal more damage, take less damage, gain bonus carry weight, and even get some extra action points to boot. Sure, the perk doesn't allow you to travel with a follower, though even this has some exceptions, as Dogmeat from the base game won't disable this perk, and the same with the Cyberdog and Sentinel Power Armor from Creations, so there are technically still a few followers you could travel with. Onto the minor perks now, which are Bloody Mess, Sneak, Ninja, Mr. Sandman, Ghoulish, Lifegiver, and Armourer. Bloody Mess gives a damage boost to all weapons. It's not a huge boost, but every little helps. It also plays into the slightly barbaric and gruesome nature of his character, so I did consider it as a role-playing perk, but a damage boost is always going to be good to grab, so it got promoted to minor. Next up is Sneak, which makes you harder to detect while crouched. On top of this, it will prevent you from setting off any traps, which I'm sure all of us have died to at one time or another. To play into the stealthy side of things, I also picked up Ninja. This perk increases the sneak attack multiplier, making it more likely for you to be able to kill your targets in a single shot. And to cap off the stealth perk trio, we also have Mr. Sandman. This will make the stealth attack multiplier for suppressed weapons even higher, tying in nicely with the previous 2 perks to help get those stealth kills more often than not. First of the fully thematic perks is Ghoulish. The Ghoulish perk will make it so radiation is no longer a problem. Instead it heals you and removes itself over time. On top of this, there's also a chance for feral ghouls to turn to your side, which plays in nicely with the flavour of the character. Lifegiver is the penultimate of the minor perks, and with it we gain a chunk more health to keep us alive, as well as constant health regen with the final rank, ensuring you stay topped up on hit points between battles. Final minor perk is Armourer. Normally I have all the crafting perks marked as essential, but for this particular character, the armour isn't actually all that useful, even when modded out, so there's no rush to be getting this perk unless you've got nothing else to go for. And finally, we have the role-playing perks of Chem Resistant, Cannibal, and Scrounger. Chem Resistant will prevent you from getting addicted to any of the chems in the game. I've never found this to be much of a problem, as I don't spam chems constantly, and there's a fair amount of Addictol laying around the place, but for just a couple of perk points, you can take as much Jet and Psycho as your heart desires. Cannibal is the most role-playing-iest of perks in the game, being terrible and bad and offering the most minor of beneficial effects in allowing you to eat dead bodies for a bit appealing. I mean, sure, it's quicker to just eat some actual food or use a stim pack, but this way you can potentially turn everyone around you hostile too. I think it's clear that I hate this perk, as the rewards from it really do suck and aren't worth wasting up to 4 perk points on. However, I do have some really cool role-playing elements attached to the perk for this character, which I will go over in the playstyle and backstory sections, so make sure to stick around for them if you want to see how I've made this perk work. Finally, we have Scrounger, which is actually quite a decent perk, letting you find more ammo while out and about. Unfortunately, it seems that the ammo type I use for this build isn't covered by this perk, as it's a creation added one, so the actual viability of this perk is reduced drastically. That being said, the perk still fits in with the idea of being a scavenger searching through containers for every useful item you can find, and you can always trade the excess ammo you find with Wasteland vendors in order to buy the ammo you can actually make use of. The main weapons for this build will be a trio of 12.7mm submachine guns. These weapons are added in with the Sea Scavenger's creation, and by reading the tiny little note nailed into the building at 10 Pines Bluff, you will be able to do an important quest to not only get a bunch of ammo for these weapons, but also unlock a couple of legendary variants. One of these will be found during the quest itself, but after the quest completion, it's worth heading to Good Neighbour where you can purchase 2 more, one named and one random legendary effect. One of the legendaries is Carlsbad, which comes with a damage boost against all humans. The other named one is Clementine, which has the same damage boost but instead against wasteland creatures. I'd highly recommend modding both of these the same way, and then just hotkey switching between them depending on the type of enemy you're facing. And speaking of modding, it is imperative that you keep these weapons with the short stock. If you change this to any other option, then it will become a rifle rather than a pistol, and the gunslinger perk will no longer work. On the same path, you want to make sure you don't put an automatic receiver, as this then changes the weapon to a commando-based one instead. Besides this, modding the weapons is fairly simple. Just make sure to throw on a suppressor for the better stealth capabilities. As well as the 2 named weapons, you can also pick up a third gun of the same type, and then mod it with the hardened 10mm receiver. You will struggle to find 12.7mm rounds as you play, so having a 10mm option is well worth it. Sadly, this does reduce the damage of a weapon drastically, and in fact makes it deal less damage than a standard 10mm pistol. On the other hand, the submachine gun does have higher fire rate and accuracy, as well as almost double range, so it's still better in some regard. The armour piece for this build is the Fire Chief's hazmat suit. This item is also gained through the Sea Scavenger's quest, and comes with a legendary effect that makes you move 10% faster. This is pretty nice to have, especially for a character who can sprint for so long, but the main reason I chose this is for the aesthetic. It's a really cool looking piece of gear, one that evokes the ghost gear from New Vegas' Dead Money DLC. This character is one who wants to cover up his inhuman appearance, and this suit will do just that. And honestly, that's pretty much all it does, as the resistances on it aren't very good, it's quite heavy, and uses up all possible slots. I say it uses all slots, you can at least still have a backpack if you're playing with that creation, so that's something I guess. I went with the survival variant with no patches, as it fit best with the look and theme of the build. This character should not side with any factions. This build isn't designed for just another generic playthrough, but instead to try and get you to play Fallout 4 a bit differently than normal. The great thing about Bethesda games is that you don't have to play through the main quest. There's a huge open world for you to explore with various side quests, interesting locations, and secrets to uncover. Rather than just killing Kellogg for the 100th time, why not take the opportunity to visit parts of the map you normally don't head to? The Wasteland Survivor is designed to be a somewhat inhuman character, one who isn't interested in talking to NPCs and forging relationships, but instead sees the post-apocalypse as a hellscape where you can only survive on your own. And on that same note, you shouldn't be travelling with a follower. Not only do you have the Lone Wanderer perk, but the Wasteland Survivor also isn't a people person. They're barely even a person anymore. If you really do want to travel with a follower, then Strong would probably be the best bet. He likes it when you eat corpses, so maxing his affinity is pretty easy, and he's also an inhuman monster who's been mutated by radiation. On a pure gameplay level, this is quite an easy and straightforward build. I played this character primarily on very hard difficulty, as the damage output was incredibly high, and the overall survivability was great too. I was expecting to be a bit of a glass cannon, as the resistances aren't all that high on our chosen armor piece, but the huge number of hit points and health regen made the build surprisingly tanky. This means you can get by well enough in open combat, but the easiest way to get quick kills is stealth gameplay. Sneak attacks with your weapons will deal hundreds of points of damage, more than enough to kill the vast majority of enemies in the game. If you do end up face to face with an Alpha Deathclaw or a Mirelurk Queen, then feel free to take a couple of chems to give you the edge. Throw on some Psycho for the damage boost, and then some Jet for the slow time effect. The 12.7mm SMG has stupidly high fire rate, so you can shoot pretty much as quickly as you can pull the trigger. This enables you to get insane levels of DPS while time is slowed down, which is not only a very effective way to win a fight, but also something that feels really cool in the moment. That's just the basic gameplay side of it all though. In order to make this build truly interesting, you want to lean into roleplay. This is a build designed to roam the Wasteland more than it is go out questing for NPCs. This is supposed to be a bit of an antisocial character, and if you lean into that, then you can try and avoid inhabited settlements entirely, and stick to the wilderness. You can get dozens of hours of exploration out of Fallout 4 without ever heading to Diamond City, Good Neighbor or the like. I know for some players this idea is unthinkable, but if you are someone who's getting tired of doing the same basic main quest focused playthrough, I would highly recommend playing this character as one who avoids any major settlements. And if you want a truly challenging Wasteland experience, then I'd also recommend playing on survival mode. While I did play this character on very hard difficulty, I still believe that survival mode will be where the build thrives. It adds in a variety of challenges, but they all really fit in with the feel of the character. Stealth builds are already great inside of survival due to how the changes to damage work, and with the cannibal perk you will also get to encounter the hidden dark cravings mechanic, forcing you to continue with your horrific behaviour to prevent starvation. It really helps you to lean into the evil nature of a character, though if you want some extra ideas for how to roleplay, then you should listen to the backstory I came up with. The Wasteland survivor was not a resident of Vault 111, but he did live during the pre-war years. What sort of life he lived back then was lost in a sea of radioactive dust and endless pain. When nuclear bombs devastated America, most of those who did not make it into the safety of the vaults were atomized. But for this individual, that was not his fate. Instead, the sweeping blast of gamma radiation washed through his very essence, twisting and contorting his DNA into something that can no longer be considered human. In his new form, he was most similar to a feral ghoul, with melted skin and a new craving for human flesh. His mind was no longer his own, and the thought of consuming those who would once have been considered neighbours or friends didn't disturb him at all. Throughout the decades, he would ambush and pounce upon any struggling survivors he encountered in the apocalyptic hellscape which he now called home. He would tear into them with tooth and claw, consuming flesh and blood with reckless abandon. But when he reached the head of his prey and cracked their skull, the greatest prize awaited. By devouring the brains of humans, he could learn about them. With each mouthful, his mind was filled with the memories of those he was eating. Flashing images would fill his mind of their lives, and he would feel emotions which were otherwise alien to him. The more he consumed, the more the lines blurred between his own bestial nature and the past personality of his meal. Thanks to this peculiar effect, after he gorged himself he would feel a great deal of shame, often breaking down in tears as his essence merged with his most recent meal, and the horror of what he had done became apparent to him. Despite needing to keep eating people in order to survive, the constant self-inflicted trauma was tearing him apart, and as such he attempted to isolate himself from all temptation, moving far away from civilization and setting up shelter near an old abandoned vault entrance. Here he curled up, hoping to endure the hunger pangs or perish before he could hurt anyone else. But after going through days upon days of withdrawal, a strange turn of fate occurred. The entrance to the nearby vault suddenly sprang back into life, the flashing lights and screeching sounds of metallic gears waking the survivor from his fugue state and drawing him in ever closer. When a soft and fresh vault dweller emerged from the relative safety of the vault, blinking under the light of the sun, the survivor's cravings took over, causing him to pounce on the defenseless human and tear them apart. Indulging after so long, he devoured the entirety of the soul survivor, consuming every part of their body, and of course, their brain. Through this process he absorbed portions of Nate's memories, from the day the bombs fell to the time in cryosleep, right up until taking the elevator out of the vault. It is through this process that he becomes one with Nate, believing himself to be the Vault Dweller for a short time, before reverting back to his bestial nature. This backstory is intended to help bridge the gap between the pre-war section and the post-war part of the game. This way you can play through the Vault section as Nate, but when you get to change appearance and special stats before leaving, you can switch to the Wasteland Survivor, making yourself appear less human than Nate would normally be. You can then headcanon the attack during the loading moment of leaving the Vault, and play as the Survivor from there. I hope you all enjoyed that build, and hopefully will enjoy playing through the game in a slightly different way than normal. If you'd like to see some other different ways to play Fallout 4, then you should check out my second channel, Bad Company Gaming. Over there I do various challenge runs, including several in Fallout 4 Survival Mode, so well worth checking those out. At the time of writing this, I'm currently waiting to hear when my wisdom teeth can be removed, but once that's actually done, and I've recovered, I should be back to uploading regularly, rather than just once a month. So fingers crossed it will only be a couple of weeks or so until my next video. I do want to say a huge thank you to all of my patrons. Not being able to make any new content for so long has meant that I've been watching my income go down day after day, so knowing there's at least some money coming in through Patreon has been a bit of a reassurance. So once again, thank you, and fingers crossed you'll be getting a bit more content coming your way in the near future. If you enjoyed this build, then make sure to like and subscribe, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.